Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Hollywood panics as TV and film production gets drastically reduced. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Woke Hollywood deserves to go bankrupt. The studios aren't going bankrupt, but the people that work for the industry are in severe financial distress. Some of them, I am sure, are going bankrupt. People that would normally expect to be able to work in the industry have been leaving the industry. And now Netflix is completely changing Hollywood because Netflix has basically beaten the entire game. From The Hollywood Reporter, Netflix subscriber numbers fueled a decade of frenzied streaming bets. That chapter is over. What chapter is over? Netflix is going to stop providing subscriber numbers in 2025. Marking the end of an era in streaming wars. They're not even going to be competing with their competitors anymore. They're not even going to publish subscriber numbers except when they hit some kind of major milestone because they've beaten the industry. And it was the competition with Netflix that drove all of the overproduction because Wall Street was cool with it. Wall Street said, hey, yeah, Netflix, they have a lot of subscribers direct to consumer. It's a great business. If studios get into that business, we will support their stock. That's where Disney stock got to its high when people saw, yeah, they were building out their streaming service. And there wasn't a question about profitability or quality of the shows. And that's where a lot of this woke nonsense got introduced, where basically it was just like, look, whoever wants to produce shows, we will finance it. We just need shows because shows get us subscribers. That business is over. What Netflix is now telling Wall Street is, hey, focus on our revenue, focus on our profit, focus on our engagement, which is how much time are people actually spending using our service, watching Netflix. In comparison to those measurements, revenue generated, profit generated, time spent on the service, Disney Plus, Paramount, Peacock, none of these streaming services can get anywhere near competing with Netflix. Netflix completely changed the game. In the middle of all this, Hollywood is pulling back dramatically because there's no one to work for anymore. Production on new shows has been cut back dramatically. From Deadline, Hollywood contraction, actors struggle to find jobs as TV castings dry up. Because if there aren't shows getting made, actors can't work. But not only actors, production people can't get jobs either. And so you'd say, you know, reality television, that's a way to make a lot of shows cheaply. Of course, you can still get reality TV shows made. No, not so much anymore. From Deadline, Hollywood contraction, unscripted TV business facing crushing grim reality as fewer shows lead to fewer jobs. Unscripted TV business is reality shows. Even reality shows aren't getting made at the level they used to get made at. And people who have won Emmys making reality shows can't get work. Not the actors, the producers we're talking about, the people who have contacts and a proven track record. If you have a proven track record in an industry and you all of a sudden can't get work, your industry is dead. Here's what Netflix is doing that changes the entire business model. From The Hollywood Reporter, Netflix subscriber numbers fueled a decade of frenzied streaming bets. That chapter is over. After juicing its subscriber base to 270 million with a password-sharing crackdown, execs want Wall Street to stop focusing on the subscribers and to look at other metrics like its revenue, operating income, and engagement. Can Disney compete with Netflix on that? Can Warner Brothers Discovery compete with Netflix on that? No one can compete with Netflix on that. In the stock market, the story is everything. If you're a public company, you want to tell a story about your business, a story of growth, of ambition, of what your future holds, and what your ceiling can be. Because the narrative attached to your stock is very important. You're telling investors, look, here's where we're at today, but here's where we think we can go tomorrow. For Disney Plus to be talking about, hey, we might be able to break even at the end of 2024, maybe even make a little bit of money in 2025. Well, that's like 10 years behind Netflix. It's not compelling. And in my opinion, it does major damage to Disney's business. When it works, you can send share prices soaring. It's something that Netflix knows all too well. Toward the end of 2021, riding high as consumers flocked to the platform during the COVID-19 pandemic, Netflix shares topped $600. By the end of April 2022, after reporting a surprising loss of subscribers, shares tumbled below $200, a massive loss for Netflix in stock price. Ever since it launched, Netflix's growth strategy was driven by new subscribers. More and more people kept subscribing, and as the company forged ahead with its ambitious original strategy, making their own content, and expanding it to more countries, the numbers kept climbing higher. With each update, the skepticism from Wall Street and rivals morphed into an earnest race to catch up. The pandemic turbocharged Netflix's growth. Executives would refer to what happened as a pull forward, with people who were likely to subscribe eventually at some point in the future, opting to pull the trigger, being stuck at home all that time during the pandemic. But it also led to the crash of 2022 as the pandemic surge waned. The company has since rebounded from that low. Shares are back over $550, but the lesson of the 2022 crash has not been lost on co-CEOs Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters. It is that context that matters when looking at Netflix's choice to stop reporting subscriber numbers and ARM, what other companies called average revenue per user. They can see the future coming, and they want to set up a new story they can tell. The past year has seen subscriber numbers rise swiftly, juiced by the company's password sharing crackdown. That effort isn't done yet, but it's safe to say the end is in sight. And a subscriber ain't what it used to be. As Peters told analysts on Thursday, we've also evolved our pricing and plans with multiple tiers, different pricing points across different countries. I think those price points are going to become increasingly different. In other words, Netflix, which used to price its service roughly the same in every market, is going to change that strategy, likely lowering the cost of its service in some countries, perhaps adding ads and skewing both subscribers and average revenue per user in the process. It was a line that rang back to Apple's 2018 decision to stop reporting how many iPhones and Mac computers it sold, with its CFO telling analysts that a unit sale is less relevant for us today than it was in the past, giving our breadth of our portfolio and our wider sales price dispersion within any given product line. At the same time, Netflix's nascent ad tier is growing quickly, with executives predicting that it will become a meaningful contributor to its bottom line beginning in 2025. Netflix wants Wall Street to stop focusing on subscribers and to look at other metrics like its revenue, operating income, and engagement. On Friday, Netflix shares fell by more than 8%, suggesting Wall Street might not be so bullish on the idea yet. It still takes time to sell Wall Street if you're going to make a change, especially like with Netflix saying, look, stop looking at our subscribers, now evaluate us based on revenue and income and time spent on Netflix. What I expect Wall Street to do is embrace what Netflix is doing because they're saying, hey, look at how much time people spend on Netflix. Look at how much money we're actually making. Judge us based on that and then compare us to our competitors based on that. And it blows away the competition. In the meantime, you take a company like Disney, who has made their deal to be able to feature the new Doctor Who episodes on Disney+, and they have yokels like this guy saying this. From Deadline, Doctor Who star Nkuti Gatwa complains that white mediocrity is celebrated, while black people struggle to get half that. White mediocrity is celebrated where? When? What are you talking about? I don't even see white people doing anything now that's celebrated, even if it's excellent work. That's not what DEI is about. DEI is about equality of outcome. Look at what he also recently said. This is from the great thatparkplace.com. Nkuti Gatwa wants Doctor Who to feature a dance scene where the Doctor destroys a monster with twerking. Okay, so he's going to use that obscene twerking to defeat a monster in their science fiction series, and that is supposed to support Disney+? That is supposed to be the opposite of white mediocrity? I don't think so. What he must consider excellence is not the same as the most of the rest of us. But that's what Netflix is competing with. That's why Netflix is saying, okay, Disney has all the brands. We can never have Doctor Who. We can never have Star Wars. We can't have Marvel. Disney has all that. We can't compete with that except on revenue, profit, and people actually spending time utilizing our service. But Disney will have the best twerking of anyone who is a non-white mediocre person, I guess. That's what Disney's business model is turning into now. And from Deadline, Hollywood contraction. Actors struggle to find jobs as TV casting dries up. And it's terrible to see a situation where people can't find jobs, but at the same time, Hollywood went in such a negative direction, such a destructive and self-destructive direction. Anyone could have predicted this, and now here we are. Most of the college-bound aspiring actors from the high school class of 2020 received their acceptance letters in the first days of the pandemic. Their early studies and stage training were disrupted by COVID, with many classes moving online. 4 years later, the same class is graduating from college and facing an even bigger challenge, a contracted TV marketplace post-strike. The situation is so bad that Deadline is doing an ongoing series called Hollywood Contraction. I will be covering most of their articles because they're very compelling. And it really shows that Hollywood is really in a depression right now. Quote, "It's so effing hard out there. There's so little work. It's a brutal time in the business. There are no jobs. I hear consistently from agents, managers, and actors. On top of fewer shows and virtually no pilots, the available acting gigs pay less than they used to amid the rising cost of living, talent sources say, making it hard for many working actors to afford their rent or mortgage and support their families." You know, that's why in the acting business, it's very traditional that people would have another job of some kind, like waitressing or any other kind of job. They can sell insurance, they can sell real estate, whatever it is they want to do, they can do that. But if you're going to go into the career of being an actor, it's a difficult life. Now it's even worse because there's really no work to be had. As Deadline reported in September, accelerated contraction and reeled-in budgets made for a bumpy re-entry into the TV marketplace post-strike. Things got only worse by November when tens of thousands of SAG-AFTRA members started looking for jobs after the Actors Union reached an agreement with the studios. Because if you're the studio and you've stopped all production because you're in the middle of this strike, that's all well and good. The problem is, when you're ready to start working again, you don't have things started up. So in addition to all this difficulty with cutbacks and Netflix basically reinventing the streaming business yet again, you're stuck in a position where studios aren't ready to hire you even if they want to hire you. It adds a delay of at least 6 months, maybe a year to all of this. But even when it's all really back and going again, there are going to be a lot less jobs and less pay for those jobs because more people, supply and demand, more people want the work than wanted it before. The wave of series cancellations during the dual Hollywood strikes has continued amid sweeping cost cutting, including layoffs and content removal by traditional media companies and some belt tightening among the tech-based streamers too, as their once sky-high series budgets have come down to earth. What's more, the strikes resulted in a pipeline backlog, with a number of streaming series originally intended for 2024 being pushed back to 2025. That has led to fewer greenlights as platforms' 2025 slates are largely filled. The same goes for the broadcast networks, with most of the new scripted series for 2023 to 2024 being delayed to next season. And they're in a non-existent pilot season, so no new shows for 2024 is what they're saying. A decade ago, as many as 100 broadcast pilots would be casting right now. This year, we have a total of 3, all at NBC. In addition to a shot at an on-air series, a casting and a pilot provides a lifeline for hundreds of actors with a paycheck that helps them qualify for the union's health insurance. Broadcast networks had already been pulling away from pilots. They don't really factor into Fox's development model, and the new CW scripted slate relies predominantly on international co-productions. With few exceptions, basic cable networks, which also employ pilots, have retreated from original scripted programming altogether. Still, after the physical and emotional toll of the strikes on actors, many of whom lived off savings and odd jobs for 6 months, they've been looking forward to the 2024 pilot season for some semblance of normalcy. Because of the effects of the strikes, which delayed production of new and existing series and development of new ones, that was never really in the cards. An anticipated flood of series castings immediately after the end of the SAG-AFTRA work stoppage didn't materialize either. Quote, "Fewer actors are auditioning this year for pilots versus previous seasons, and actors are really feeling the emotional effect," one casting director said. "Competition for the few series regular roles that are available is much, much more intense." The same applies to name actors getting offers. NBC's Suits LA pilot cast Arrow and Heel star Stephen Amell in its lead. During pilot season, we would normally have a feeding frenzy for TV stars of his caliber. But because of the contraction, with broadcast volume going down, pilots drying up, and streamers often going for feature names, there are dozens and dozens of proven TV stars in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, all of whom have headlined hit series that have been sidelined for months, some for a year or two, with no major job prospects. The value of series regular roles has diminished over the past 10 years, as TV seasons often consist of 6 to 10 episodes in the streaming era, a fraction of the standard 22 to 24 episode a year broadcast shows that dominated television for decades, making it harder for rank-and-file working actors to make a good living off their episode fees. Again, Netflix changing the business forever. Even broadcast series don't always produce 22 episodes a season anymore. with 13 to 18 episodes considered a standard order size, and the current network model rarely can sustain a show beyond 6 or 7 seasons. Still, due to the volatility in streaming where short seasons of 6 to 8 episodes could run a year and a half or 2 years apart, and shows often get canceled after 2 to 3 seasons, a lot of big-name stars who had turned up their noses at broadcast in the golden era of cable are now looking to go back to the steady paycheck security that network business provides. But those well-paying jobs are harder to get as budgets are being slashed amid industry-wide drive to rein in costs. Broadcast dramas often now cost between $3 to $5 million per episode, streaming ones $5 to $10 million per episode, down sharply from the highs of the past decade, according to sources. A renewal for a series nowadays almost inevitably comes with a budget reduction that impacts every facet of a show: crew, sets, locations, post-production, as well as casting. That has led to salary concessions, like the 25% pay cut the Blue Bloods cast took to pave the way for a season 14 renewal, and series regular cast members getting downgraded to recurring, which means they get paid less. Quote, fewer series regulars, more pressure to cast actors in recurring guest roles without series options, casting more local actors if the show is shooting in Atlanta, New York, Chicago, or Canada to save money, one casting director said about the way studios tackle casting budget cuts. That often makes for a balancing act. Quote, in many cases, when the series spends a lot of money for their series star who anchors the show, that leaves very little money for the rest of the ensemble cast, the person said. One talent agent lamented that in order to save money, a show that would have had 8 series regular characters in the past would now list 4 of them as series regulars and the other 4 as recurring. Casting sources confirmed the new normal of roles being listed conservatively on breakdowns as guest star, possible recurring or recurring, possible series regular, so networks and studios could spend less on a pilot for a show with many characters. The executives then decide which actors to upgrade if the pilot is picked up based on which characters popped. The drop in supply of series regular roles has greatly increased the demand, which largely eliminates leverage in the actors' negotiations. According to talent reps, outside of top A-listers, most series offers are now capped at $100,000 per episode, and they are take it or leave it, with studios willing to go to the next actor on the list at the slightest pushback. The budget cuts also have greatly reduced the ability of cast on established series to renegotiate their contracts. TV industry tradition calls for actors on successful series to be able to negotiate salary increases after seasons 2, 3, or 4. That now only applies to the biggest of hits. A recent attempt by an agent to renegotiate their client's contract for a pay raise after a couple of seasons of a mid-tier series was quickly shot down. Noting the budget cut that the renewal had come with, the studio offered to write off the actor if they were unhappy with their salary. The scale back on the number of shows and pilots also means fewer jobs for casting directors. Because most of their work is still being done remotely and virtually post-COVID, some have opted to leave LA for a more affordable living as their income has been hit by the drop in casting assignments. Others are training to be insurance writers or real estate agents. Many talent agents are hurting too. Smaller agencies' income depends almost entirely on commissions, with the lion's share coming from series regular castings. Already hit hard by the strikes, resulting in salary cuts and layoffs, some of those agencies may find it hard to recover amid the current casting drought and series cancellations. The current TV budget cutbacks follow a decade of escalating prices fueled by the streaming wars, as attracting big talent and big shows was considered paramount in the pursuit of subscriber growth. With the focus now shifting to profitability, the market is undergoing what many describe as a correction. The question is how long it will last. So while some predict the current contraction to last a couple of years, with the volume of castings and acting salaries creeping back up from the current low point, making a living as an actor would likely continue to be difficult, leading to scores of performers potentially leaving the profession. This is not encouraging news for the acting class of 2024, as they prepare for another hard and uncertain transition, entering a job market that may not be able to sustain them, at least for the next few years. There used to be a currency in being able to produce and put out shows, and that's what the streaming industry depended on. That provided a tremendous demand for people to work on shows. Actors, production people, writers. It was pretty much unlimited. That also meant if you wanted to push an agenda with your show, okay, fine, no problem. They don't care what they're putting out, as long as they get content. But now reality has caught up with these studios. The only successful streaming service really is the Netflix streaming service. Netflix has changed the game to get Wall Street, their investors, to really focus on profitability and how much time people are actually spending viewing their streaming service. Disney and the rest of them will now have to try to catch up to Netflix, producing things that people actually want to see. Even if Netflix's competitors understood how to do that, even if they understood, okay, this is what people want to actually see, I'm not convinced they would know how to actually produce that anymore. But if they did, it would mean getting rid of a lot of the very weak talent that they took on to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a lot of those people will never get jobs again. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.